The presence of antibodies is what they look for when they test for HIV. I was 22 years old in 1993, 10 years since the first cases have been reported about in NYC. Now spread throughout its various communities, no longer them, because now it's we. But that didn't stop me from testing the breaking point of invincibility. I stepped into the room that smelled of sterility, where I waited for what seemed like an eternity to see what the results of my test would read. Your test came back positive, he said, nothing less, nothing more. Unable to look me in the eye, he stared down at the floor. He'd never delivered an HIV positive test result before. My impulse to bolt out the door was outweighed by the need to make sure that the doctor felt secure. So I stayed, and I was counseled some more. 7 years to live were some words I grabbed onto. Treatment options and not a death sentence were some others. You good, you all right. Go ahead. You good, you good. No, it's nothing like that.
Far from simple, I am simply Rob, more than just a homo in the crew. There are those of you who want to hate, make no mistake, I'll penetrate you too. Breakthrough, that's what I do, because a story seldom heard doesn't make it any less true, so I dance. Between respectful restraint and the freedom to push people's buttons by way of creative expression. I maneuver through the onslaughts, make it to your soft spot to provoke thoughts. Like or dislike the shit that I write, I shed light. Smash the stereotypes despite your perception of what's wrong or right.
Do you know what it is with me and the gays? She once asked me. She said, I love the struggle, that daily struggle just to be who you are, just to love who you love. Most of us don't have that struggle. If I didn't think that she already knew, I would have said to her, true. In a heartbeat, I'd trade places with you. Maybe she did know that when it comes to this, sometimes I'd rather be on the outside looking in, that the daily struggle is tiring, that at times it feels like a battle I just can't win. Other times it makes me feel like a salmon as he swims up the stream against the current to fulfill the purpose of the life he's living. But it's not salmon eggs that I'm fertilizing, but the minds of those that are listening to my poetry, or whatever you want to call the shit that I'm spewing. I remember that still a boy I used to ask God, why? Praying that he'd take away my newly awakened desires, the ones that instinctively I knew I had to hide. Why didn't I say something? And who the fuck was I supposed to confide? What words was I to use to describe the hormonal fire that raged inside? That I might be one of those maricones that my family, everyone around me, that the world despised? I had no concept of what were sex or suicide. But at the age of 10, knowing that I was different, I thought it would be better if I just died. I was about 13 years old when I found the guys. No, the men. The men that didn't give a fuck if I saw them do what they do. Shit, some even let me try. Men with dicks in hands in public bathrooms while others turned a blind eye. And mommy, oblivious as she waited by the door outside. Are you okay, Roberto? And I'd answer her with a lie. Ya voy, ma. There's a really long line. By the age of 15, I was doing it all the time. The ready, willing, and able weren't difficult to find. Some older in age, some closer to mine. I had learned how to identify, how to read the signs. That certain word, that glance disguised, reflecting that uncertain question caught within the shadow of our shifting eyes. And with each and every conquest came a guilt that paralyzed. In 1991, I dated a guy who was even more promiscuous than me. He introduced me to crystal meth. I didn't really enjoy the high at first. It was too intense and it kept me up for days, but I partied occasionally anyway. In 1993, I tested positive for HIV. I continued to rely on sex as a way to cope and escape my reality. I began to use crystal more frequently, which made it easier for me to engage in sex without disclosing my status. I became consumed by the intensity of the drug-driven sex and unraveled within the progression of an almost 15-year addiction, which at my lowest point left me a strung-out IV crystal meth abuser, homeless on the streets of New York City, with little more than my life and the clothes on my back. Some days, the thought doesn't even cross my mind. I know it's there. Just like the physical and emotional scars I've acquired or self-inflicted. Even my 5 tattoos. They've all been a source of pain at one point or another, and now it's just a part of me. Other days, I can't get it out of my head. I walk through those from the moment I wake till I curl up with my dogs in bed, feeling like damaged goods. Beating myself up because I didn't act as I should. If given the chance to be 21 again, use a condom this time, I'd like to think that I would. Time and again, I've heard how there's nothing more important than family. That experience is Japanese to me. I'm asked sometimes if my family even knows. The question is almost always followed by expressions of confusion and disbelief when it is learned that the answer is no. As if because they are family, they're entitled to this information about me. How could I possibly keep this from them? But they'll never hear it from my lips. Even though I'm sure they've imagined it. They come from the school of thought that AIDS is what happens to junkies and fags, that this is God's wrath. Being both addicted and gay were 2 strikes against me. The fact that I subscribed to the same belief as them made 3. So for me, testing positive for HIV was merely a self-fulfilled prophecy. You don't select what family you're born into, but you do choose your friends. These days, I choose mine wisely. I can say pretty confidently those whom I love have as much love for me. Every once in a blue, I am disappointed when one refuses to drink from the same glass or bottle I have, or pulls out the disposable paper plates for me, while everyone else eats from regular dishes and cutlery. So I wash my food down with gulps of reality. I wonder where I fell short. What opportunities have I missed to educate my peeps? Then I seize the moment and teach. Blood to blood or semen to blood contact, I tell them. The virus can also be found in vaginal secretions, but not saliva, sweat, or tears. So as long as we're not sexing raw or sharing needles, we have nothing to fear. Nodding their heads, understanding it appears, no love lost.
Just to borrow, because I don't steal, but just to borrow some of Rob's words, right? Everything is poetry. Poetry is a way of life. Poetry is the way we live. Poetry is what we feel, you know? And it is everywhere. It is everywhere, especially on such a harsh day like this, because we've all been through things. We've all been through things that at some point has made us cry. You know, we've shared, we've broken in tears, and we've put it in one way or another inside our head, and that's poetry. The connection to release and to share with other people, that's what's sometimes missing. Because sometimes we're still afraid to be judged. We're still afraid to be pointed at and say, that didn't rhyme, you know? But like Rob said, it doesn't have to.
I used to have my whole life ahead of me. Now at best, my glass is half full and I still thirst. I thirst in the desert of what I have to show for myself, for the moisture of a purpose yet to be discovered. All I can do is spit. I spit to unchapped lips dehydrated, because for an addicted, HIV-positive homo of color in America, there are already too many reasons to feel worthless. I fall back and observe shit. Judging you, judging me. Allowing myself to be taken to the places comparisons can lead. Depression is anger turned inward. so I write myself inside out. I write because it's easier to express than it is to feel. I spit about my pain so someone else can hold it for a while. You see, they mess with me the moments spent dwelling on my past, but I can't help it. I look back on a life full of uncertainty and lowered expectations, thought out and impulsive choices. I swim in the ocean of my memories. I drown in the indigo of my pain. I am resuscitated by my refusal to die without creating a legacy to leave behind, as my virus and I walk hand in hand toward the dawn of our sunset years together. I wring my gut out in these poems. I wear my heart on lines refrained. I beat back my demons trying to keep them tame, cause I no longer get high to escape my pain. Writing is all I have to keep me sane, as the thoughts in my brain grind against each other, louder than any subway train. The only way to lower the volume is by allowing them to speak through the ink. I'm not really crazy about the shit I've been writing these days, so I stab my soul with a pen. I puncture through spiritual dimensions and roll my ballpoint against the surface of lives past. Scratching them, I dig a little deeper in hopes that what bleeds will leave a profound sense of connection for the ones who listen or who read. More than just tales of intrigue, I drop jewels, while claiming my place amongst those witches, word players, and speakers of truth that have come before me. Planting seeds of poetry, bearing fruits of inspiration for the ones who will succeed. My poetry is my legacy. Thank you.
I told you, there's no word needed. You'll say it all.
It wasn't so much not wanting to be a statistic or not wanting to be just another person with HIV. I was just tired of suffering. And so I needed to do whatever it was that I could do to free myself of the suffering. And so that's why I stood. I'm not taking it lying down. I'm not bending over. I'm standing. I'm standing up. And in the act of standing, I have freed myself. And so mostly what I'm doing is standing and making the change for myself. And in doing so, when you do that, people take notice. You know, and people taking notice, you inspire others to do the same. 7 years to live were some words I grabbed onto. Treatment options and not a death sentence were some others. Had I been another, I might have jumped in front of the 2 train like my girl Sharonda's little brother, or hung myself in the bathroom with an extension cord like my boy Pito's baby's mother, after they discovered that the baby had the monster too. But instead of suicidal ideation, I found that I had the will to live, and that I actually possessed the power to forgive. Forgive myself for the choices I had made and the actions I had spoken. Forgive the one who infected me because he's dead, and I have a long life ahead. Forgive my mother for her ignorance and for her religious convictions which allow her to believe in a God whose answers to drug addiction and homosexuality are AIDS and HIV. Forgive the doctor for his contradictions, for his inaccurate depictions, for pushing mad prescriptions, for his 7-year prediction which caused me for some years to reside within my fear. It's been 17 and I'm still here. It's been 17 and I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere anytime soon.